Hi, everybody. It's Amanda Edwards, and I'm here with Charles Johnson for a real community conversation. As you all know, when we highlight real community conversations, we're talking to real people about real stories on issues that are very important in our times. Right now, we're going to talk about maternal mortality and the pressing issue that it is today. And Charles, I want to thank you for being willing to talk to us today. You have such a compelling story, so I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, certainly. So thank you so much, Amanda, for sitting and chatting and really just making this issue around maternal mortality central to your movement and your campaign. So it's an honor to be here to share Kira's story, my story. So my name is Charles Johnson. I'm a native of Atlanta, Georgia, and I always wanted to be a dad, right? I was fortunate enough to be the woman that absolutely changed my life. And so when we talk about my wife, Kira, we're talking about sunshine personified. We're talking about a woman that spoke 5 languages fluently, that was a pilot. Those know me way out of my league, right? And we're blessed to welcome our first son, Charles, in 2014. And we really wanted back-to-back boys. So we were over the moon, when we found out we were welcoming our second son, Langston, in 2016. We had recently relocated from Atlanta, Georgia to Los Angeles, California. And part of the painful irony of what I'm going to share with you is that we made the decision to deliver at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. Largely because it was our understanding that Cedars-Sinai was the best place in the state of California, so we thought, and one of the best places in the country, once again, so we thought, to deliver a baby. So Kira had a fantastic pregnancy, went through her pregnancy with no complications. And so on April 12th of 2016, very importantly, at our doctor's recommendation, we walked into Cedars-Sinai Hospital for what was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, and walked straight into a night. Langston was born perfectly healthy, 10 fingers, 10 toes, super handsome, looking like me, right? And everything that we had talked about, everything that we had dreamed about, it was finally here. Everything that we had prayed for. And so shortly after the delivery, they take us back to recovery, and we're sitting there, and Kira's resting, Langston is in the little incubator resting, and I'm just taking it all in, right? All that pride, all that joy of being just a father for the second time. And as I'm sitting there and I look down, I begin to see the catheter from Kira's bedside begin to turn pink with blood. And I bring it to the attention of the doctors and the nurses at Cedars-Sinai. They come in, they assess Kira. Keep in mind, we went in for the delivery around 2, so this is around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So they come in, they examine her physically, they check her vitals, they do an ultrasound, and they can see that her abdomen is beginning to fill with fluid. They take her blood and they do a couple of other tests. Very importantly, they ordered a CT scan, Amanda, that was supposed to perform a stat. Keep in mind, this is around 4 to 45.
Which means immediate.
Which means immediately, thank you. And so at this point, I'm concerned. I'm like, we're at Cedars-Sinai. My wife is healthy. My baby is healthy. We've got a plan. Like, I can live with this. 5 o'clock comes, no CT scan, right? 6 o'clock comes, no CT scan. Thinking like, well, where's the CT scan, right? Why? What's going on? And I'm asking, they're saying it's coming. 7 o'clock comes. By 7 o'clock, she's shivering uncontrollably, right? I'm saying, where's the CT scan? Oh, it's coming, we'll see, and we're getting this run around. 8 o'clock comes, no CT scan. Still haven't taken care of back for surgery. Her levels are continuing to drop. She's in more and more pain. She's sensitive to touch. She's having a difficult time staying awake. Still no CT scan, still taking care of back for surgery, and we're just getting the run around. 9 o'clock comes, still no CT scan. She's still there, she's still suffering. We're asking. So keep in mind, this isn't a woman that's there by herself. I'm there advocating for my wife. My mother is there, who is a force of nature in her own right. My mother-in-law, who damn sure is a force of nature, is there. Her brother, we're all there advocating. Her aunt, who's a retired nurse, are all there.
Wow. So you have a whole team of a family.
So we're like, look, what's going on? We need answers. And we're getting the runaround. We can't find this person. We need answers. We'll get back to you. People are coming into the room. They're never coming back. And the whole time her condition is deteriorating. 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, still no CT scan. Still haven't taken her back for surgery. It wasn't until 12:30 a.m.
So after you requested this at 4 p.m.
the doctor requested the CT scan. Stat at 4:45. After being there for almost 10 hours, they finally decided to take her to surgery. And at this point, I'm frustrated, exhausted. She's very weak, but she's conscious and she's aware of everything that's going on. And they're taking her down the hall to surgery, and I'm walking by her bedside, I'm holding her hand, and she's telling me, baby, I'm scared. So as a husband and a father, I do the only thing I know how to do, I'm just trying to reassure her that everything's gonna be okay. And it's gonna be fine. And the other thing that's just as alarming as the level of neglect that I've described is the lack of fundamental human decency. So one of the doctors that was responsible for her overhears this conversation. He says, this is exactly what he said to me. I can remember it like it was yesterday. He says, it's not a big deal. Sometimes these things happen. I'm gonna go back in through the same incision I made for the cesarean. I'm gonna find out what's going on. I'm gonna fix it, and she'll be back in 15 minutes. You know, they wheel her through a set of double doors. The doors closed behind her, and that was the last time I saw my wife alive. When they took her back into surgery and opened her up, there were 3.5 liters of blood in her abdomen. We're talking about a woman that is 100 pounds on a good day. And her heart stopped immediately, right? And they tried to save her, they worked on it from the time they were able to save her, right? And so, cure deserves so much better, right? And for me, I thought that this was an anomaly. I thought that women who are healthy, that have access to care, that are in places like Cedars-Sinai, they don't die in our country in 2016.
And she had been having her prenatal care and all those things.
Obsessive about her prenatal care.
So she
right?
had been doing the
never
things
missed
she
a prenatal
was supposed to be
vitamin.
doing. Yeah.
Right, never missed an appointment. You know, I know because I went to the store at 2 a.m. when she ran out. I never, you know, and so she, you know, if you look at it, had everything going for her. And for her not to survive, I couldn't wrap my head around it. And, you know, but I still was thinking that this is just an anomaly. And, you know, as the days and the weeks went by, that's when I began to understand, and when I started to do the research for myself, that this is America's dirty little secret. That we are in the midst of what is truly a maternal mortality crisis, that more women die in the United States than any other civilized country in the world, right? We are one of 50 developed countries that has a rising maternal mortality rate. Almost 2 women a day are dying in childbirth in the United States. 2 women a day.
2020.
In 2020. What makes it even scarier is the CDC has determined that 60% of those deaths are preventable.
60% of the deaths.
60% of the deaths are determined preventable. That's not my statistic, that is the CDC's statistic. And we're just scratching the surface. Because when you delve into statistics, we have a serious issue when it comes to racial disparities. This is an issue that is affecting all Americans from all walks of life, regardless of socioeconomic status, geographically. But when we talk about how African American women are dying 3 to 5 times as often as their Caucasian counterparts, that's shameful.
Now, what are some of the identifiable reasons for that? Do we have an understanding or appreciation for some of that? I know that you had to delve into this pretty deeply after Kira passed, and of course, I express my condolences for that.
Thank you. So, from a totality standpoint, when we look at the crisis overall, there are a lot of contributing factors. There is the fact that we have a healthcare system that fundamentally puts profits over people. Let's just call it what it is. And that compassion has been removed. If you look at right now, in this generation, the cesarean rate has jumped by 500%. 500%, okay? And so you're talking about a system that is encouraging providers to force women to have babies cheaper and faster, right? So when you can Right now in the United States, it is more dangerous and more expensive to have a baby than it ever has been before. We talk about lack of access to care, but more importantly, lack of access to quality care.
Right.
All these things are important. We have a lot of social determinants as well. When we talk about racial disparities, there is a huge issue with bias and women of color simply not being heard, simply not being taken seriously, simply being marginalized when it comes to the issues and the things that they're expressing.
Like Serena Williams had
right?
circumstance similar to that.
Had a circumstance where she was emphatic about the fact that something was wrong, that she knew her body better than anybody else under the roof of that hospital, but yet she was being ignored, she was being denied. And had they not intervened when she might very well not be here. But whether it's Kira Dixon, whether it's Serena Williams, quite honestly, just to be transparent, I hear similar stories from women from all walks of life, from Caucasian, when they are being dismissed, they are being not denied, but it is amplified tremendously with women of color, right? We're not being believed. But if we go back to the roots of the medical practice in this country, until very recently, textbooks in medical schools teach doctors and medical professionals that African Americans have a higher pain tolerance threshold, right? There is stereotyping in a level that you would not believe. And if there are problems that are fundamentally rooted in racism in this country that are having horrifying effects today, and we really got to do something about it.
So to that end, you have done something about it. It's obviously not the end all be all, but it's certainly a start. Can you tell us a little bit more about what has been done?
Certainly.
And your advocacy, by the way, has been incredible.
Thank you very much.
Of course, I heard you speak at the March of Dimes Nation and was really moved by your story, as was everyone else in the room.
Thank you.
But telling your story is part one of this journey, but part two happened to have been real advocacy that now is impacting other people.
Right, and so thank you so much for that. And so, I made the decision that when I found out just how bad this was, I had to do something. Right? I didn't know what I could do, but I felt like I had to do something. And so I made the decision to share Kira's story publicly, and it just resonated so tremendously, far more than what I could have ever imagined with people in every corner of this country. And I've been fortunate to share her story in a lot of really neat places with some neat people. And so as I began to advocate and share Kira's story in hopes of preventing the same thing from happening to other women, I started looking for ways that I could create systemic, sustainable change. And so I began to support a piece of legislation called HR 1318, which is the Preventing Maternal Deaths Act. I'm proud to say that in 2018, I had the opportunity to go to Capitol Hill and testify before Congress, along with some other wonderful advocates who've been fighting this fight. And we were able to bring the private sector, we were able to bring community health organizations, we were able to bring a bipartisan support of legislators to the table and stand united to send a loud, definitive message to this country that mothers and babies matter. So in December of 2018, we passed the first ever piece of federal legislation to prevent women from dying in childbirth, but it's just a start.
And if somebody wants to learn more information, something you might have said today, may connect with them, where can they even learn more about maternal mortality?
Sure. So there's a lot of great resources. So our organization is 4Kira 4 Moms. It's the number 4, KIRA, the number 4 Moms. So it's 4Kira4moms.com. We have a tremendous amount of resources. Not only that, there's other great organizations, and I'd like to not only elevate ours, but March of Dimes is doing amazing work. When we talk about racial disparities, there's an organization called Black Mamas Matter, and those are my sheroes. They are fighting this fight, block by block in our communities to make sure that Black women and women of color have a right to a dignified birthing experience, right?
And what is that? Tell me what that is.
So dignified birthing experience, I feel like that is something where you are heard, where your concerns of you and your loved ones are put at the forefront, where your pain, whether your concerns are not dismissed, and whether you feel that the color of your skin is not jeopardizing the health and the outcome of you or your child.
Got it.
Yeah. And so that's something that all women deserve. And so working close with organizations like that to close that gap in disparity. But the thing about this is that it's not just enough to close the disparity gap, because white women are dying too.
Yeah.
Right, so we have to raise the collective tide for all women in this country, while making sure that we are calling out systemic racism, or we're making sure that we are supporting pushes to, eliminate implicit bias.
Well, let me say this. I cannot thank you enough for the advocacy and just amplifying not only a very personal story, but using this story as something that can impact the lives of others and improve life outcomes for people.
Thank you.
So I appreciate your advocacy. Thank you.